Well, howdy. This is Erin.
Hello!
She is one of my best friends, and she's come to bless me with a visit. If you're wondering why the quality has jumped up like 1,000%, it's because she was a brilliant comm major here, and she has a camera, and that is that. But, Erin, would you share a little bit why you're here on Sarah Recovery of all channels?
Yes, I'm so lucky and blessed to be on this channel. And I'm part of the reason I'm here is that I am also recovering from an eating disorder. Sarah helped me get to this place all summer long. Do you want me to just tell?
Yeah, go, please.
Okay.
Just talk.
So I realized this past summer that I had developed an eating disorder, anorexia, and it actually kind of started back in high school. I found this terrible evil app, which I will not tell the name of, but you could set your own calorie limit, and then if you went over it, your little cartoon person would get shocked and electrocuted and blown up to a huge, morbidly obese person, and they would tweet out that you had gone over your calorie goal.
Oh, you didn't tell me about that!
Yeah, that was a terrible, terrible app that I became
So terrible!
Yeah. It was so bad. And so I would set my calorie limit to be way too low and knew what would happen. And the tweeting out was one of the actual worst things, because then my friends would know and it would be terrible. And so I would use that, and then I would lose a lot of weight and pretty quickly. And my mom, who's a nutritionist and dietitian, would be like, what happened? And so I'd kind of have to hide that and be like, I was on my period and I didn't really eat, and then have to go back to eating so that she wouldn't realize. But I kind of cycled through many little phases of that my junior and senior year of high school. And then I came to college, and I am a vegetarian, and this cafeteria at Mill the worst.
Also edit
Okay, I'll do that. I'll put a little bleep. This school is the worst, and so I didn't have a lot of options being a vegetarian here. So I don't think I realized it at the time, but through counseling and looking back, I wasn't eating a ton. I was eating enough, but I could use the excuse of the calf is terrible to not eat a huge meal or to skip meals because there's nothing vegetarian.
I think the excuses are interesting, because I had one of my biggest excuses that I cringe about was I just brushed my teeth. It'd be 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They'd offer me a carrot, and I'd be like, no thanks. I'm sorry, continue.
No. And so that was my freshman and second year. I was only for 3 years.
Bleep.
Shoot. Yeah, I'll put a bleep. At this school for 3 years. And so, the calf just helped me not eat a ton. And then what really sparked the full-blown eating disorder, not that I had a lot of disordered eating, but I think the real pivotal transition for the actual eating disorder, everyone is different. I don't want to say that if you have things like I did before, it's not an eating disorder, but for me, I don't think it was all the way there until I worked for a traveling summer camp, and I'm still vegetarian. And so we'd go to these janky little camps that had salad for me, and that was it. And so I was eating not a lot, and I basically learned how to ignore my hunger cues, because they didn't have anything else for me, and I was a backstage manager, so I was doing a lot of heavy lifting. I was on my feet for 12-13 hours a day. I was very active, and I wasn't really able to eat as much as I should have. So I came back from that summer camp, and I was like, I'm never hungry anymore. I'm going to use that to my advantage. And I was like, I'll just if I'm not hungry, I'll wait to eat breakfast, or maybe I won't have dinner that night. And I didn't realize how quickly I was going to spiral. And then I started having liquid calories for breakfast. And then that was my only meal until I could eat dinner at 5. And then dinner was my only meal. And I just didn't realize it, but I was slowly spiraling down and creating all these rules about food. And I was losing a lot of weight. And people were telling me how good I looked. And I was like, I think at the time I called it intermittent fasting. And I was like, I'm doing intermittent fasting so well. I'm looking so good.
You never said that to me, though.
Really?
You always said, oh, I'm just not hungry anymore. And I was getting home about hunger signals and stuff because I thought that was the key. And I was like, I'm not going to assume that everybody has an eating disorder because Erin can't have an eating disorder. And then I remember, like, getting more and more concerned, but you always just said you weren't hungry, and if you're not hungry, then you shouldn't push it.
Yeah. I think, like, closer to the end, when I was, like, realizing how much I was never hungry, I think I started to, like, because at the time, my boyfriend at the time was getting worried, and I had a couple friends, and I was like, no, I think I'm just doing intermittent fasting, and I was just trying to, because I was somewhat self-aware, and I was like, I'll just call it this trendy diet. Because that was probably the most complimented I was on looking good in my teenage and young adult life. So I was like, I don't want to stop what I'm doing. Like, I'm finally getting, like, the body that I want. Like, why would I stop? And so I just became more strict and more strict and more strict and more strict until I basically had a breakdown. I went to Waffle House, and I hadn't eaten all day. And it was like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and I just was like, screw it. And I ordered, like, not even a lot of food, but at the time, like, a lot of food for myself, and I ate it all. And then I came back, I was hanging out with my boyfriend at the time, and he tried to make out with me, and I couldn't do it because I felt disgusting and huge, and I just, like, broke down, and he was so confused. And that was, like, the moment that I knew that, like, something was wrong with my eating. Like, I used to be able to have, like, 3 meals a day and then go to Waffle House late at night and have all that food, and I was fine. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, that was all I ate, and I still just was, like, freaking out. And so Sarah was in Spain at the time, but I was like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, Sarah, I think I have a problem. And spent most of the summer in eating disorder counseling. My depression and anxiety had also gotten really bad this past summer. I had a job at a restaurant and I had to quit because I couldn't handle being around that much food. And so then, like, my depression and my anxiety and my eating disorder all just kind of clung to each other and just, like, were a big weight. It wasn't like I only had one I don't want to say deal with, but, like, they just, if one got better, then the other would bring it down. And so it was this, like, every day was, like, a different Erin. Like, I could be doing really well, and then my third meal of the day would come, and I couldn't do it, and then that would make me really anxious, which made me really depressed. And it was, like, this sliding scale of mental wellness.
And it was weird. It was great. It's hard to say. I was really upset that Erin had this and that she was struggling, and I remember, like, just mourning for her, like, that she had to go through recovery. But I think I said, like, it'll be one of the hardest things, but it'll be one of the most transformative things. It was just weird to see the rationale because eating disorders aren't rational. And so she would be texting me, and it would be, like, these long texts where she was like, I feel this way, but I know this. I feel this way, but I know this. And it's like, I think that's part of what's hard about communicating with a friend with an eating disorder, especially one that knows it. Well, actually, it's harder when they don't know it because then you're like, but, like, with her, she knew it, and she read my thesis, too, and so it was just, she knew so much, but there wasn't anything that I could say to help her because she already knew that it wasn't true, but I just kept saying what was true, and it was like, I mean, it's the importance of speaking the truth in their lives and kind of, like, countering the lies, and the lies include, like, you look fat and you look terrible, and then you need to be the truth sayers that, like, look at her, and just, Yeah.
It was very helpful because, like, my mom being a nutritionist and dietitian was, like, a double-edged sword. Because I grew up with a lot of rules around food. Not with my mom doesn't have an eating disorder, but just with she's a nutritionist and dietitian, and I learned a lot about food growing up with a mom like that, and so I knew a lot, and I kind of used that as like a weapon against myself because I was like, eating around this time makes it hard for you to sleep, so I like created a time window of the only time I could eat, and I would use all this information. But then when I was trying to recover, I was like, I know this stuff. And Sarah was like, and knew even more about food in the eating disorder sense, and I read her thesis, and I was like, I know all this stuff, but I named my mom was so worried when I told her this, but I named like the eating disorder thoughts Mildred. I'm sorry if you have a grandmother named Mildred, but it just was like a yucky old lady name that I could be like, this is not me. This is a yucky, mean lady in my head. I don't have multiple personality disorder.
No, I did that too. I used the Odyssey. I was like, Skillet. I always pronounce it wrong.
My mom like literally thought I was having like a true mental breakdown. I had like multiple
voices. It was a little trippy for me. It was like, Mildred's telling me this, and I'm like, oh, yeah, right, okay.
And like, Erin knew all this stuff, but Mildred could still be like, nope, like, it doesn't matter if like you should eat because it will help your metabolism or whatever, like, think about how big you'll be. And that was one of the hardest things, was like, I would feel very heavy after I ate, like more so than just like feeling full, like my whole body felt heavy. And I had that kind of image from that app all those years ago of like blowing up, and I just had this image of me as this like morbidly obese human almost every time after I ate. And so like I never wanted to experience the aftermath of eating, even if I knew that like I wanted to eat and I needed to eat, and I knew that wasn't true. I knew it was still going to be so hard to like deal with those thoughts and the feelings that that was like reason enough not to eat. But my boyfriend at the time was like really helpful, and like I had a rule of like, after I eat, like, you can't touch me for like at least 30 minutes, because like if you wanted to cuddle, sweet boy, thank you, but like don't touch me. I feel so horrible, and that will make me feel even worse. But like him and Sarah were my like two main supports, and they would just like speak the truth to me over and over and over and over and over and over until I finally was like able to start believing it and be like, all right, these people aren't gonna lie to me. Like, they have nothing to gain from lying to me. And so like in the beginning, like I would always feel bad because I would like argue with them, because I'm like, I know you're right, but like I can't. And I would just like, I didn't want to argue, but I was like, I can't believe what you're telling me. But they didn't give up, which is something I'm like so grateful for, because like they just started to wear Mildred down, and their voices started to be louder than hers.
The thing is also, you need to figure out what kind of language worked for the specific person. Erin and I work really well with having the science behind it. And some other people, that's not how they need to work through it by doing something else. I've seen people that really need to just draw it out or something. They need to put active time into drawing or something. And Erin and I we need to know that we're on the right track scientifically. And that was what was helpful, and with my background, it helped. However, that did cause problems eventually. So do you think you could tell your perspective on that?
Yeah. So I want to preface this with saying, like, Sarah was, like, single-handedly the most helpful person in my recovery. And I don't think I could be sitting here where I am today, like, eating and doing what I am without her help. And I also have a fear of conflict. So when we started to have differing views on recovery, I definitely made it a little bit worse, because I was like, I can't tell her because I'll make a fight, and then I waited too long. And it became, I think, bigger than if I had stepped up to the plate in the beginning. But I read her thesis, and she's a brilliant, smarty pants. That is amazing. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I know that Sarah's so smart. And then as I started going to eating disorder counseling and like figuring out my own ways, like I started to differ from what Sarah's thesis had said. And I was like, oh no. because I really valued and respected her, and I knew how brilliant she was. I knew how helpful she was, but I was starting to like get to a point where it was like I had to put on my big girl pants and not let other people do my recovery for me. And my recovery started to look a little bit different. And Sarah, being the kind, wonderful human being that she is, kept trying, as she had been all summer, to help me. But I started to need I needed help in a different way, because my recovery looked different from hers. And I think that's probably the case for most people.
Yeah.
Everyone's recovery is different. And I think I had to kind of put the expectation of like, Sarah and I are so similar. Sarah is so brilliant. I love Sarah so much. My recovery will be Sarah's recovery. And it was for a while. We had followed the same path, but then I started to like panic when it was different. And
What specifically was different?
I'm trying to remember, like, I remember talking about in counseling. I'm trying to remember, like, I think it was like my eating plan. Like I would plan out what I was going to eat and when I was going to eat it. And I think
I more flew by the seam of my pants.
Yeah. And I had tried to do that, and I wasn't doing very well. And I didn't want Sarah to take me not following her plan personally. And so I started to be like, oh no, which I think was immature on my part. But like Sarah was so helpful, and I was like, I can't critique like her helping me because that's critiquing her thesis, and that's not what I want. And so I made it bigger in my head, because planning for me was very helpful. And I felt like if I told her that was me being like, you were wrong, which is not the case.
Mm-mm.
But I think my anxiety being at an all-time high, just like I didn't have the skills to like communicate well most of the summer.
Sorry.
And so then I kind of was like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And then I waited too long, so it became a bigger thing. And I was like, hey, like, I really love you, but like, I can't really do your way of recovery. And I don't remember all that I said, but I don't think I said it super well, which made it hard on our friendship.
I don't really remember. Like, I felt like we handled it fine. Like, we had that one text conversation, and then I was like, oh, I understand. Just putting this on we're kind of like delving into our friendship here, but I thought of it as, I will understand the way of your recovery. However, I'm not going to initiate anymore just so you can have it on your own terms. And then you took that as, she doesn't like me.
Yep.
And then
that's what I was trying to get at.
Now we're good.
Yes.
Great.
And now, like, we can be like, we'll ask questions of like, hey, did you ever experience that? Hey, what did you do when this happens? Because like, it's only been, I was looking through Instagram and WhatsApp to like kind of see if I could figure out like the day I realized, and it was June like 10th or 11th. So it hasn't been that long for me. So I still have like plenty of times where I'm like, hey, and I like reach out to her, and like we can we're like fraternal twins.
And it's now, I hate that you've had to go through this, but it's really comforting to have somebody that understands. Like, it's been a while for me. I'm going on my 3-year anniversary in recovery, and I still have really bad days, and it's nice to have somebody who knows exactly what I mean when I say, I can't look in a mirror, or something along those lines, and we're just here, like, batting down the lines of the other, and it's like whack-a-mole with eating disorder lies. But, so our recoveries are different.
Mm-hmm.
Our eating disorders are different.
Yeah.
And you kind of made the differentiation between numbers and more like meals. Like you like chalked it down to one meal. For me, when I was my sickest, it was when I was 15, and then I would have like a number, kind of like yours, only it was in my head, and that number was in my head, and I couldn't go over. And then at school, I was convinced that I did not have an eating disorder, so I would have a breakfast, which was half a grapefruit, and then I would have lunch, which was another half, and then dinner was steamed vegetables, and then lunch disappeared, and then but I wasn't sick, I had no meals. And that was kind of like my tactic. But eating disorders can look differently.
Yeah. So in high school I had the numbers thing, and then, but when like I was like, I basically had like a full year from like the summer camp to like when I realized, and so that's when I had my spiral. But when I was really bad, and even in the summer once I realized it, that didn't mean it went away. It was I could only eat between the hours of 3 and 5 p.m. and it was all about the size of the meal. So I didn't necessarily track calories, but it started out as like I would like there's cookouts around us, and I would have like a cookout sweet tea when I woke up, and the liquid calories would be enough to hold me out until I would go through my whole day, work out, and then eat dinner around 5. And then that was like my only meal when I was in school. And it started out just whatever I wanted. And then it started out, it had to be smaller than what everyone else around me was eating. And then it started out basically being like a snack. And it just kept getting smaller and smaller. And the eating less than the people around me was one of my like, it's something I still struggle with. Like if I was like at a party and like saved my meal for that because I knew I like if I didn't eat it'd be a weirdo, like I would be the last one to get food because I had to evaluate everyone else's plates and make sure I had less than that, because in my head it was like if you have as much or more, they're just gonna look at you and be like, what are you doing, you have so much food. And so it became all about the size and comparison of meals. Like my boyfriend at the time is 6'1", and so like he would eat a ton, and if I ever wanted to match him, like if I was as hungry, I was like, what are you doing, like that's way too much food, when like I could have eaten like not eaten all day, and like we would go get pizza, and like if he had 3 slices and I wanted 3, that was like way too much, so I had to have 2, and I probably should bleep out numbers. But like everything was a comparison game, every meal, everything, and it always had to be smaller. So that was more how mine manifested, was not necessarily tracking calories, but tracking the size of it.
Okay. Yeah, well, this is Erin. Thank you guys for watching. I love you a lot. I talk about you to Erin. And it's been nice. I share emails, not that they're private, but just like the general sense of them. I really appreciate you guys. And Erin, do you have any closing thoughts?
Thank you for watching and supporting Sarah. And as a subscriber to her channel, it's going to be kind of funny to see me pop up. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope that it can be helpful in some way, because there's not one way to have an eating disorder. And I feel like eating disorder YouTube channels, not this one, but other ones that I watched while I was in recovery, were all kind of the same thing. So I hope that hearing it different.
They can be really depressing. They're just so depressing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good out there, this girl, but there's also some bad. And so I hope that while I don't hope you have an eating disorder, if you're here, you probably do, and if your story looks a little more like mine, I hope that hearing that I did it, I'm in recovery, I'm not recovered, but I became self-aware, I leaned on the people around me. Don't be afraid to ask for help. If I didn't ask for help, I would not be even in recovery. Let the people around you love you, because you're worth recovery.
Yeah. She said it best. Goodbye, my friends.